Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next installment in our ongoing series with Dimension Data to explore the role of enterprise technology and how it's helping organizations achieve their business objectives. Often we talk about offense when we're talking about cloud and customer relationship management and all these other issues. Today we're talking about defense. We're to explore the role of managed security services and its role in optimizing enterprise security, expediting remediation, and retaining talent. All issues that are going to be critical as we continue to march into an industry that is under attack from a variety of different types of bad guys. Joining us today, we have a really great couple of a team of panelists. We have Zane West from Dimension Data. Zane, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you very much.
Also joining us today from Intel Security is Richard Bowman. Richard, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today.
Morning, Lane. Pleasure to be here.
Richard, let me start with you. Tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing at Intel Security. It's one of the best known brands in the world. We think of you, though, not necessarily in the context of security. Help us understand what you do and what Intel is doing specifically in that area of security.
Sure, no problem. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the call from the Bay Area, where I think I'm probably the only person without a hangover this morning after the local Golden State Warriors won the basketball finals last night. So I'm bright and breezy.
Congratulations.
So yeah, so here at Intel Security, and for those that just need a quick reminder, what used to be McAfee, Intel bought us a number of years ago. We're really focused on helping organizations solve some of the biggest challenges in the security space. And when you think about that, like you think about where we are today, it's not just that the threat landscape has evolved to where the sheer volume and complexity of challenges that our customers face is huge, but the choice that our organizations face out there in terms of what technologies to buy to try and solve some of these problems is as big as ever. It's crazy. And when you think about that, it's no wonder that it's very, very difficult for organizations to stay on top of some of these big problems that they face. So at Intel Security, we've really developed the broadest and most consistent portfolio of technologies that allow you to optimize your security posture without having to deal with hundreds of different organizations to get the most out of what you spend on security in terms of the most advanced security posture. And my role at Intel Security is to run the managed services business, which basically means to work with strategic partners like Dimension Data, who can take the Intel Security technology and optimize that within their own managed security services on behalf of their customers. We're super excited about the partnership. Dimension Data is helping our customers get better return on investments, better outcomes, quicker response times, faster remediation than they ever have before. And we're super excited that Intel Security's portfolio is a major, major part of what Dimension Data offers in terms of their global managed security services.
Outstanding. Well, perfect segue to you, Zane. Tell me a little bit about what your responsibilities are at Dimension Data and the role of managed security services and your portfolio of offerings to a growing enterprise base in your customer base.
Great, thanks very much. So yes, I'm responsible for essentially all of the pre-sales within North America for security for Dimension Data, but with a primary focus really around the development and operationalization and really the go-to-market strategy around our managed security capabilities. Now, over the last few years, this has been probably a significant focus for us across the globe, not only in North America, but really around the world, and with Intel Security being one of our key partners that we've been going to market with, and initially starting out just on the endpoint, but really expanding that across the portfolio. As far as what we're trying to do, we've made some significant investments across the globe. We've invested in, made some acquisitions down in Australia, which is now part of our go-to-market and our global strategy around consolidating all of our managed security capabilities and really making a consistent offering across the globe and growing that as much as possible.
Excellent. So Zane, let me follow up with that. So we've seen more and more headlines developed around the concept of managed security services. Tell me a little bit about, help me put that into context. What's happening to the threat landscape that is creating interest in this concept of a service, because so much of the attention up until now has been around point solutions, either for intrusion prevention or intrusion detection. It's sort of been tools that have been managed internally, it seems to me. Maybe I'm wrong. But explain to me how the threat landscape has evolved and why we're seeing now a demand for actual managed security service from a third-party provider like you and Intel.
Great, yeah, thank you. So I think probably traditionally over the probably last 10, 12 years where there's been some level of focus on development of security capabilities, and like you said, it's very much been a perimeter. The idea of security was always just having a perimeter device as the IDS or the IPSs and maybe a firewall doing some of the work on the perimeter, whereas now it's becoming much more targeted. There are multiple vectors in terms of how people are being attacked, and it tends to be a little bit more targeted in terms of how they're getting in. So we now have to worry about what's happening on email, what's happening on malware, what devices are being connected to the network, how they're being connected, and with this comes a lot of complexity in the architecture, and it's no longer good enough to just have that one layer. We now have to have multiple layers, and protection in depth with adding all of the stuff to it. With that comes a certain skill set requirement, and what a lot of organizations now who have traditionally held on to that, the security is important, we need to keep that internally, the thinking is now that they want to first of all shift the responsibility across to another organization, somebody who specializes in that space, but also what they found is that they just cannot do it as cheaply as what an MSSP would be able to do. So it's really just shifting that responsibility, allowing them to really be responsible only for the policies that drive what needs to be protected, understanding the risk context, making sure that their assets are being protected, and let everything just be part of a business outcome and rather just as a service.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So just as follow, so I would agree with that, Zane. And I think, Lane, let's look at some of the fundamental things that are happening, right? So some pretty high-profile things over the past year or two. And so organizations and the public are just fundamentally more aware than ever about when something happens, what the risk is to a reputation or to share price or to customer confidence. And so when you think about actually what's happened in a number of those high-profile cases, sometimes but not always, the technology has been in place theoretically to have really stopped a lot of the damage, but there just hasn't been the expertise, the processes, the ability to respond in a timely fashion. That hasn't been in place, and therefore the damage is much greater than it could have been. So we look at organizations like Dimension Data who can not only sort of help you really understand your risk profile and provide you with fantastic technology, but they augment that with the ability to respond and get back to a normal state in a much more sophisticated and faster time than you could before. And that is the fundamental challenge that I think many organizations are facing. And we're probably going to talk about this later on, and I know Zane will have some points, but you don't necessarily have to give up the control and the the visibility that you've had previously. It's not about one or the other. Which is an important point I know that we're going to explore on this call.
Yeah, no, certainly. When I think of security professionals in the enterprise, the word control freak comes to mind. Maybe that's not politically correct, but these are folks that are very interested in understanding and having their hands on the machinery. Could the case be made, Zane, that you actually improve visibility if you have a managed services that helps you integrate point solutions that are out there and that perhaps are fragmented? Because you described a targeted attack, meaning that organizations have specific victims in mind or targets in mind. But the attacks are much more complex, as you described. They're looking for those seams in the point solutions. How does a managed service provider do two things? Provide greater visibility into what's going on with those point solutions, and yet also plug the holes between that might exist in the seams between those solutions.
So I think there's a couple of things here. So starting off with how do we plug those holes and make sure it kind of works a little bit better? And that's where a partner like Intel Security comes into play, because what they've done very successfully is making sure that it's no longer just point solutions. What they've done is they've pulled in and they've integrated all of their technologies. They're sharing information. They're constantly giving you this feedback. So when we detect something on the endpoint, it's passed off and handed off to the IPS as well as the firewalls, as well as that through in the form of signatures. And that's really through their TIE technology. It's been phenomenal. Probably again game changer in terms of what we're expecting. Now, with that comes in far greater visibility. All of these technologies then are able to kind of provide you this dashboard where they're all talking to it and allow you to see what's going on there. I think also what happens and where the benefit of an MSSP comes in is that, you know, we're not only looking at one person's environment, we're looking at everybody's environment, multiple clients in different verticals and across the spectrum, across the globe. And what that gives us is the ability to be able to detect and provide intel based on what we've seen is seen in one client to all of our clients, and it's kind of a constant, you know, back and forth and sharing of information, which a client ordinarily is not going to be able to do, because all they see, even doesn't matter what kind of threat intelligence feeds or anything like that they have, it's still just going to be limited to the context of what's in their environment, and they're not seeing what's happening around the world, and you know, from that perspective. So that certainly creates a far better visibility, as well as a far greater level of intelligence in the content that we're developing and the correlation rules that we're doing for those alerts and notifications for that client.
So, Richard, what does that mean in terms of the way you're developing security technologies? Zane is suggesting that you developed a more integrated approach. Does that mean that when you do antivirus, you're thinking about the role of threat intelligence or the role of intrusion prevention? How does it come together as you're designing the next generation of solutions that are designed to be used in a managed services context?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few parts to that answer. I mean, firstly, to Zane's point, through our TIE technology, we're really getting to a point where we can correlate all of the information from all of the points, all of the different products that we have in our portfolio, so that you can, and in this case, Dimension Data as a managed security services provider can make as much sense as you possibly can with it, and make some recommendations and respond within as quickly or within as timely fashion as possible. So the technology that we provide to Dimension Data to deliver their managed services, we think optimizes those outcomes, helps them optimize their SLAs, helps them optimize the commitments that they can provide to their customers. You know, we recognize we're not the only technology provider behind the scenes, but as a huge part of that, we think we have a big role to play. The second thing that we are designing for, and we're constantly evolving our technology, is, okay, well, how do customers want to consume, right? And what I mean by that is, it's not just about the financial consumption models, which I'm sure we'll touch on, and they've evolved, but it's about, well, how do I want to consume? So every organization is different in terms of their geographic dispersity, or the regulatory or compliance requirements that they have, or just the different classification of data or IP. And so we believe that it's important to have choice, right? So not all organizations want to consume completely cloud-based managed security services. Not all organizations, you know, necessarily want to hold on to all of those assets and have all of the data locally. In fact, the emerging hybrid model seems to be the design of choice. But again, that isn't one size fits all. So when we look at how our customers can consume managed versions of Intel security technology, how they can optimize the investment they make in that technology, we look at Dimension Data as being able to provide options around those consumption models, and options around how those consumption models can evolve over time. And that for us is fundamentally important. So, you know, clearly the technology itself, its ability to respond to the most advanced threats, our ability to normalize and correlate that information across all of the different products from endpoint to the cloud, but augmented with Dimension Data's ability to allow you to consume that in multiple different ways and evolve that over time. That is the only way that we can truly, as an industry, help organizations really get the most out of the money that they spend to protect the most critical assets, their people and their data.
That's interesting. So Zane, a couple of threads that I'd like you to pull at that Richard just mentioned. Let's start with this whole notion that that most organizations have a cacophony of security solutions for many different vendors in place. and that's probably contributing to those seams or those disconnects in the security paradigms that they're trying to put in place. How do you work with that? Are you able to mix and match different kinds of vendors, and how do you create that centralized dashboard or that integrated dashboard that provides that visibility and control over what is truly a complex security tool landscape that most large organizations must have?
Okay, so a couple of points over here, and I think traditionally it's always been a case of everybody was under the impression that it was always, better to diversify in the technology because it was, kind of separation. So we've got like multiple thought processes around how those things are working. What we're finding more and more now is that clients are looking to consolidate, and it's probably our through our recommendations as well, is consolidate the vendors that you're dealing with because, first of all there is an easier, better integration across those technologies, but also then it makes it easier at the back end to be able to integrate and get visibility out of those because it's providing information in the same way. But with that being said, is there's still very much the school of thought, in particular in the larger enterprises, that they want to have a diverse sort of set of technologies out there, and they want to have multiple layers, and they always want to go best of breed. So with that, that's once again another thing that an MSSP does is that we work with all of those vendors and those technologies to be able to feed all of that information that we're getting and all of that into our back-end SOC and make sure that there's visibility into that. Now, with the SOC, you're not just using a single SIM tool or anything like that. You're using multiple tools, but the key is we spend a lot of time and effort and money in making sure that we're integrating and recognizing what we're seeing across all of the vendors and not in particular. Somebody like Intel Security, it just makes that a lot easier for us because it's just almost a single point that we have to address, and that's the way from the management point of view as well. But it still provides us with the diverse, visibility into what's going on in their environments.
All right,
and
Zane.
Just to add, just quickly on that, right? So I know we're talking about managed security services here today, and Intel Security is a security provider, but we recognize that solving some of the broad challenges that many of our customers' organizations have in terms of moving to more consumption-based models. In terms of reducing risk across all of their critical assets, that is more than just security, right? So when we look at that, well, hey, we don't necessarily want to just be a niche part of that offer. When we look at working with Dimension Data, then we look at that as an ability to be part of a much broader solution. To a number of those challenges, and their broader cloud and their broader managed IT offerings are important for us to be part of. I think that's an important point to stress.
Well, so Richard, let me stay with you on that one because it struck me as I was reading up on managed security services that one of the compelling points is that as these attacks get more complex, it's two things that are happening, right? We have excuse me. Increasing complexity and more dynamic. The threat is evolving more rapidly. So, Richard, it seems to me that the skill sets that might exist inside of an enterprise are at risk of becoming obsolete because things are getting more complicated more quickly. And if you're not in the business of staying on top of that, you might have an experience and expertise lag. So I'm wondering if you can explain to me how it is that you guys stay on top of that and how that gets communicated to an organization like Dimension Data so that organizations can take advantage of that skills gap, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure. Let me touch on it and then I think pass it to Zane to talk specifically about the sort of the augmentation of skills that they provide. But there's a couple of things here. So one is, every organization typically has a different level of skills and approach to whether or not they want to invest or not in in-house skills, right? And that's often based off historical reasons, but also their view on what they would like to maintain a lot of control over versus other, and that changes. What I would say is it's obviously getting harder and more complex. We know that. And so at the very minimum, being able to augment if they exist, significant in-house skills, whether that be within certain time zones or certain hours, is a basic and an often small but very impactful step that you can make. And then as we look to the future, well, the reality is that the historic approach of having core teams and resources being focused on individual sort of component parts of a security deployment, that's going away in favor of, hey, how do I know as an organization what's happening across all of my assets, and how can I prioritize the top X number of things that are taking place so I can make some decisions? And some organizations, yeah, they're still very happy to go and invest a significant amount of money to try and get that outcome themselves, but that is going away, both in terms of in the face of the maturity and the sophistication of the offer from managed security service providers like Dimension Data, but also just in the sheer challenge and the fact that it's not necessarily core to a lot of organizations' businesses. So again, it's not one size fits all, but there's a clear trend. And so, my role and Intel Security's role is, how do we optimize our technology and how do we create the right partnerships so that as that behavior continues, that we help our customers get the outcomes they want while still being able to leverage the significant power of Intel Security technology.
Excellent. Zane, how does that change the way you go to market? Are you going to market saying, look, this is more than many of you can keep up with. We're in the business of keeping up with. We have these relationships. How does that change the way you guys go to market?
So I think what we're finding more and more is that the role of the security organization within the client environment is actually changing. So no longer are they looking to be the technical hands-on people. That's the piece I would rather outsource to us because they just can't keep up with the skills and requirements. But what they're trying to do is be more of the kind of the translator between the business requirements, turning that into policy and having that, and then passing on those sort of controls and those requirements down to us as an MSSP, which is what we're using to be able to manage according to the business outcomes that the client is looking for. So I think it's no longer a shift, and I think most of our clients realize that they've traditionally had very small, focused security team. It's potentially just a subset of their networking teams. But what they're trying to do now is say, how do we get the most value out of those individuals? Because it's just not good enough that they can't be everything all the time. So they let them focus on what the business needs and requirements are, and rather pass that on to us and let us be an extension, the technical extension to what they're looking for, and let us worry about how do we make sure that we're able to support and manage and properly integrate and in accordance with the best practices recommended by all of the vendors. Make sure that we are able to. Make sure we're all able to actually just push it through and manage that in a way that makes sense to them.
Well, good. All right. Actually, Richard, you alluded to this, so let me give you a chance to make the first comment. The business models that you see evolving. So we keep hearing as we move to different types of either moving things to an as-a-service environment, which I guess this might be classified as a flavor of that. We keep hearing about the moving from CapEx to OpEx in the way we manage many aspects of IT. How are you seeing the way technology for security gets funded in the enterprise? Are you seeing a similar motion there? What are sort of the business models that are shifting among your customer base to fund and put in place the correct technologies?
Sure. So a couple of things. So firstly, regardless of how organizations effectively pay for these services, there's a shift towards quite rightly a demand for outcomes, right? So instead of buying technology, it's like, hey, we've identified that these are some of the fundamental outcomes that we need from our security technology in order to keep our organization, keep our people safe, keep us up and running, protect our reputation, etc. These are the fundamental outcomes. And so there's a definite shift towards consuming technology like that. In terms of the financial models, yes, there is like with the vast majority of IT now, a shift towards, hey, can I consume that on a more of a pay-as-you-go basis? Some organizations like to spend out of OpEx budget. Some organizations like to spend out of CapEx. Again, there's going to be very, very different flavors around that. But there's a definite shift toward that. And one of the things that Intel Security's done is we've made available all of our technology, our hardware, our software, our cloud technology available to our partners and Dimension Data to enable them to go deliver those more on-demand services if that's what the customer wishes. So it's not, again, one size fits all, but those are the trends. It's, hey, what are the outcomes? And typically tied to service commitments and service levels versus what technology am I buying? And then, yes, I want to increasingly see my consumption shift to more of a pay-as-you-go basis. And I know that that is very it's something very important that we see Dimension Data offering to the market using our technology, and I'm sure Zane has a few comments on that.
So Zane, just to add a wrinkle to the question as it goes to you, Richard mentioned outcomes. What are the metrics that we ought to be measuring to determine whether or not we're reducing our risk exposure, and how does a managed security service accelerate our path to that reduction in risk?
So a couple of things. I mean, I think our clients are looking for not only the SLAs, the traditional SLAs that they've always been looking for, but they really are looking to make, they're no longer looking for point solutions and SLAs associated with that. They're now looking for a solution as a whole. And with that, they also don't want to pay for necessarily the what they're not using, so they don't want to go and buy for the next 3 years. They're going to have excessive amounts of capacity over and above what they're looking for, but they also just want to say, I just want to add on as I need it, and bring that all into. So there's a few things here now. So now, first of all, there's the services attached to the technology. The technology needs to have a consumptive model that makes sense to them. We've developed something called Dimension Data on Demand, but which really allows them to, as we hit certain thresholds in capacity, we just sort of add the technology and capacity to what they're looking for, which means that they're only paying for what they need here and now. Then also through the MSP licensing model that Intel Security has provided us with, and which is really a game changer, because it's now one of those things that, first of all, Dimension Data is not taking all of the risk as far as the technology is concerned, but we're sharing that with Intel Security. But then also with that, there are certain elements that the client is no longer taking, so because they just use it as they need it, and if they want to change their minds as far as the technology is concerned, there's no this 3-5 year commitment as far as that is concerned necessarily. But then what it also gives them is with the services that we're wrapping around it, as well as then the SLAs around mean time to detection and things like that they're looking for. Now it's reducing overall business risk. As soon as you're using an MSSP, the kind of cyber insurances that they're having to take out now, which is now a major factor as a result of a couple of these significant breaches, that reduces their risk and premiums and whatever they have to pay as well, because there is a certain operational process that they're, and a certain level of maturity around those services and the technology that they wouldn't necessarily be able to achieve on their own, yet it's demanded from us because of our client requirements and making sure that we do that. So, all of these sort of tie in to be able to overall reduce the risk to their clients, to our clients, and looking much more towards business outcomes as opposed to just point solutions and technologies.
Outstanding. So, Richard, let's begin the wind down process here. Help me understand, your closing thoughts, the key concepts that our enterprise audience needs to understand about the nature of the risk to which they are exposed, and the role that this new model, or this evolving model, this rapidly maturing model of managed security services is offering as a way to address those risks.
Sure. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, this is about demanding and challenging the organization to look at the fundamental outcomes that you can get in terms of the dollars that you spend on security now. So that's number one. The second is being able to identify the most critical core assets, intellectual property within the organization, and then having a clear understanding set of commitments, service levels, guarantees from your managed security services provider around not just the ability to protect those, but how quickly they can help you get back to a normal state is fundamental to being able to de-risk, and to also have the confidence that what you're spending to protect your organization, to keep it up and running, is going to actually do that, and have that contracted for a period of time. So I think that's that's definitely the most imperative thing. And when we look at how our customers are looking to consume Intel security technology, it's definitely via that route. The second thing that I'd say, and we touched again on this earlier, is the use of technology is continuing to exponentially evolve, and the particular trends that I think you'll see around that. So one is we're seeing the concept of perimeter and network security becoming increasingly blurred in favor of cloud and endpoint security. And so think about what that means for you as an organization. And talk to Dimension Data about how they can help you understand and plan for that. And then the second thing is, I think, just in terms of the collaboration tools that you're seeing coming into the workplace now, whether it's startups like Slack and HipChat, these messaging and collaboration tools, I think, are here to stay. And I think that's going to have a massive shift and change in terms of where a lot of your core IP has and is residing, which has typically been an email. And I think, again, that's something just to have a think about and speak to Dimension Data about, because they can give you a good understanding and a good idea as to how you can plan for that in the coming months and years.
Well, Zane, Rich is putting a lot of pressure on you guys at Dimension Data. Answered a lot of questions. I guess that's a good thing. But help me, why don't you bring us home and give me your closing thoughts, final comments, and help me put a bow around this.
Great. So I think there are a few things that we're trying to achieve. We're working with our clients and trying to be that trusted advisor. And I think largely to Richard's points is that we're looking at all of our business outcomes. We're looking at all of the critical assets within your organization, whether it be IP, data, client information, or any of those sort of things, and we're making sure that we're trying to deliver sort of a set of controls around that, and driving through both. And we're taking much more of a consultative approach to understanding the business and the organization, and then making sure that we're aligning the technology and the controls associated with that. I think that we're looking at long-term maturity of an organization and how do we get them there as a roadmap, and not necessarily just purely about point solutions here and now and looking at it in isolation. So I think that as a whole, we're trying to be like I said, that trusted advisor, and give the client all of the technology, any technology that they need in order to be able to deliver on their desired business outcomes, but also give it to them in any consumptive model that they might need, and whether it be a hybrid or whatever it is. I think also as the data center now extends out into the cloud and it's no longer on-prem, it needs to be flexible enough for us to be able to go and replicate irrespective of where this technology resides and where their critical assets reside. Our services need to be able to extend into any part of that organization, whether it be a public cloud or private cloud or hybrid or any of those sort of things, as well as in the traditional data centers, as well as then with the telecommuters, and make sure that we're extending out to be able to protect those workers irrespective of where they are around the globe at any given time. I think that selecting the right partners and the vendors that we're working with, where they've got a clear vision, and clearly this is one of the greatest benefits to Intel Security at the moment, is they just truly have a vision as to where they want to be and where they're going and how they're extending their technology out to be able to support all these different elements that we're looking for. And then with that, in terms of how we've developed our services to wrap around those technology and those technology choices, has made us a significant player in this market, and certainly one up and coming and growing and being far more widely recognized in this space.
Well, that was great. Zane, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. And Richard, same to you. I appreciate your taking the time. And to you, our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. This is just the beginning of a conversation. Please feel free to reach out to Dimension Data and Intel Security to learn more about what's going on in this very dynamic space. I take from this a problem statement that's only growing more complex. We need a solution that is as dynamic to the problem as it's manifesting itself. I think the case was very well made today that this might be an option for you guys to consider. I hope you take a look at it. On behalf of Dimension Data and Intel Security, I'm Lane Cooper with BizTech Reports and CIO Magazine, and I wish you a terrific rest of your day.